Peace, friends of refined investing. It's Thursday, and of course, we're continuing here with XRP content. Maybe some of you have already noticed over the past few days, there was a highly respected PhD economist from the USA, so basically someone with a real doctorate degree, of course. He works mainly in the specialized field of economics and global financial markets, and he really knows his stuff there. Right now, he is causing a huge stir in the entire XRP community because, he is claiming that XRP can mathematically never reach a price of $10. And that's exactly what a lot of people in the crypto market are talking about right now. But honestly, I think this guy has completely misunderstood some fundamental things about XRP because while he's claiming that XRP has hardly any long-term potential, a lot is actually happening in the background. For one thing, Ripple is minting the largest RLUSD supply of all time. More and more XRPs are disappearing into ETFs, and on top of that, there's a lot happening right now in terms of regulation in the US. And that's exactly why things are getting interesting today, because on the one hand, we'll take a look at why RLUSD might actually be bullish for XRP, why so many people completely misunderstand the entire role of the XRP ledger, and why the next regulatory steps in the US are much more important than many currently assume. But I'd say let's get started, and we have a unique offer for everyone in the DACH region, so whether you're in Germany, Austria, or Switzerland, anyone who wants to trade, we have 40% off trading fees for life, plus you get an account with VIP5 status right away. You won't find an offer like this anywhere else in the DACH region. So if you're interested, the link is in the video description. You'll find everything there. It's through WEEX, and yeah, it's a one-of-a-kind offer you won't find anywhere else. So if you're interested, feel free to check it out. As I said, you'll find the info in the video description. And of course, please feel free to give the video a thumbs up. And for anyone who's new here, feel free to subscribe to the channel. So this economist is currently claiming that he has, well, done the math, as he puts it, and therefore XRP could basically never reach $10. And that's exactly where, in my opinion, it gets extremely difficult, because I'll put it this way. As soon as someone claims they can calculate the future price of an entirely new financial system exactly, then it just becomes problematic. I think he would agree with me on that, especially when it comes to technologies that are still in the middle of being developed. Because let me put it this way, if it had been that easy, then back in the day, everyone would have been able to perfectly predict everything with Amazon, Tesla, Nvidia, or for example with Bitcoin, but nobody did, right? And that's exactly why I consider such statements often extremely hazardous and misleading, because a lot of viewers then mistakenly think, okay, he's a real doctor, so it must be true. But let me put it this way, even the greatest economists in the world have historically been wrong very, very often, especially when it comes to technological revolutions, because in those cases, it's simply not just about pure mathematics, but about adoption, network effects, capital flows, regulation, liquidity, and in general, also about psychological market phases, for example. But now we come to the real problem with his argument, because, his main point is basically Ripple is now using RLUSD, so nobody needs XRP anymore. And that's exactly where, in my opinion, there's a complete technical misunderstanding, because RLUSD runs on the XRP ledger. So a lot of people simply don't fully understand the system behind it. Ripple never intended for XRP itself to become the only global currency. Ripple is basically building a network on which various assets can operate. So on the one hand, stablecoins or digital dollars, CBDCs, tokenized assets, stocks, derivatives, and international payment flows. And XRP simply forms the infrastructure and the liquidity layer for this. That simply means the bigger RLUSD becomes, the more the entire XRP ecosystem theoretically grows as well. And that's exactly why I see RLUSD more as a confirmation that Ripple is also expanding its strategy more and more aggressively. And this is exactly where, in my opinion, things get extremely interesting, because Ripple has just carried out the largest RLUSD mint of all time. We're talking about 260 million RLUSD. Sums like that don't usually just happen by accident, right? So this just shows that behind the scenes a lot more is happening right now than many people currently realize, because stablecoins could become one of the biggest markets ever in the long run, especially from an institutional perspective. We're potentially talking about banks, international payments, digital dollar systems, treasury solutions, corporate liquidity, and yes, global capital flows in general. And that's exactly where Ripple is currently trying to strategically establish itself. And in my opinion, they're doing a very, very good job at it right now. And now comes a point that, in my opinion, is talked about far too little, because, more and more XRP are currently disappearing into various ETFs. By now, we're talking about over 1.4 billion XRP that are tied up in different ETF products. And that's extremely exciting because, at the same time, XRP is also deflationary. So that simply means that with every use of the network, XRP is burned, while ETFs additionally remove coins from the market for the long term. And this exact combination has practically never existed before, especially not with an asset that is also trying to become institutional infrastructure or even the face of it. What I also find interesting is that, a lot of Bitcoin maxis constantly criticize Ripple because Ripple sells XRP, but at the same time, many of them ignore the fact that Bitcoin miners are also constantly selling coins. And that's exactly where you can often see just how emotional the discussion gets. Because in the end, what really matters is the network being used? Is demand fundamentally increasing? Is institutional capital coming in? Is real infrastructure being created? And that's exactly where Ripple is simply becoming more and more visible. And that's exactly why I find this whole thesis that XRP can mathematically reach some XY extremely problematic. Because back then, no one could precisely calculate how big the internet would become. No one could precisely calculate how big artificial intelligence would get, for example. And just as little can anyone today precisely calculate how big blockchain infrastructure will really become in the long term. Then, if XRP actually becomes part of the global financial infrastructure, we're suddenly not just talking about some ordinary coin anymore, but about infrastructure for liquidity, payment processing, for stable coins, and generally also for digital assets. That's exactly why the whole thing is also much more complex than just the number of coins times the market value, right? It just doesn't work that way. But now the regulatory aspect also comes into play. Because, let me put it this way, according to current statements, the next major vote on the Clarity Act could already take place as early as July. That would, of course, be absolutely huge, because that's exactly what the market is waiting for. Regulatory clarity simply means more institutional security, more investments, more financial products, and significantly more capital inflows. And that's exactly why the current situation is suddenly becoming much, much more bullish than it actually seems right now. Especially, of course, for projects that are then simply set up in a clean, regulatory compliant way. And that's exactly where Ripple comes in again, of course. And that's precisely why I also believe that many people are still thinking far, far too small when it comes to XRP. Because the real question now isn't, can XRP reach exactly $10? The real question is simply, how big will the network actually become in the long term? If Ripple really manages to succeed with its vision, then we're suddenly talking about global liquidity. We're talking about digital financial markets, about stablecoin infrastructure and institutional capital flows. And that's exactly why, in my opinion, it's completely impossible and actually totally unprofessional to try to calculate exactly where and when XRP could be at a specific point today. It just doesn't make any sense. But at the end of the day, crypto remains volatile, of course. At the moment, absolutely nothing is guaranteed. It could also drag on for a very, very long time, but overall, the developments around XRP just seem extremely exciting. We now have RLUSD, the whole ETF topic is growing massively. Regulatory-wise, a lot is suddenly happening right now, and overall, things just look very, very good. Except, well, if we look at the prices right now, of course, not much is happening there at the moment, but that's simply because it's dependent on the cycle. Phases like this just aren't very exciting in terms of prices, but it's extremely important for building a solid foundation. So it doesn't have to be fun, it doesn't have to look good, it doesn't have to be completely euphoric. That's just the crypto market. It's often just very, very dry, but these phases are extremely important, and it's especially during these times that you see who really sticks with it and pushes through, and who in the end gets rewarded. Because let me say, the people who jump in again during the hype phase when everyone is looking at crypto again, those are definitely not the winners. Those are the ones who buy in at too high a price and end up losing even more. And we, who keep pushing forward even during these phases, who take a proper look at the projects, see where the real potential is, and maybe only focus on a handful of projects, but do so effectively, those will simply be the winners in the end. It's that simple, right? But yeah, that's it for now. We'll continue on Monday. Feel free to check out WEEX. We have a one-time deal for the entire DACH region, 40% off for Life and VIP5. You won't find that with any other YouTuber. You can compare it anywhere you like. It doesn't exist elsewhere. And yeah, definitely take a look. So for anyone who trades, yeah, you're saving money right away. Normally, you only get that with, I don't know, several million in trading volume, right? So check it out. It's really, yeah, an opportunity. And as I said, it's of course free. It's just a platform. You can simply sign up and yeah, then you're good to go. With that, I'd say that's it for this video. And yeah, we'll definitely hear from each other again at the latest, as I said, on Monday. Hang in there and see you soon. Peace, peace.